thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Francesco Muredo. I am Vice President at the Lisbon Council, a think tank based in Brussels, and I coordinate several projects in the smart city realm, especially Horizon 2020 city missions, in particular URBREATH, Blossom, and a project that will start very soon, which is Urban Flow. So welcome to our panel. So the panel is titled Socio-Technical Systems View on Integrating Resources and Stakeholders Network towards long-standing challenges. And during the panel, which I will moderate, there will be 4 presentations of 4 EU projects, 3 Horizons and 1 Digital Europe program project. And then we're going to have a set of questions from myself to the panelists, and Q&A from the audience. So the first presenter is Marcella Bonanomi, who is a Senior Research Associate and Project Manager at the Lisbon Council, who will present the project URBREATH. Marcella, the floor is yours.
First of all, good afternoon, and thank you for joining our panel. As Francesco just anticipated, I'm going to present you the URBREATH project. And the URBREATH project is an Horizon Europe project which works in the domain of adaptation to climate change of our EU cities. It's a 4 years project that started in January 2024 and is planned to be ended by December 2027. Our consortium is kind of a big one. We are 37 consortium partners, and most importantly, we have 9 pilot cities involved in our project, clustered around 4 climatic zones. We have the Mediterranean climatic zone, for which we have involved as pilots Madrid, Parma, and Athens. We have the Boreal zone with Tallinn and Kajaani. We have the Atlantic zone with Leuven and Aarhus, and we have the continental climatic zone with Cluj-Napoca and Pilsen. So we are kind of covering the whole Europe with our 9 pilots. And what are the challenges that our pilot cities, but probably also the other EU cities are working on, are eager to address? First of all, we know that urbanization is constantly growing in Europe and is planned to grow more and more, and so climate change. Therefore, our cities are at the forefront of climate change. And as climate adaptation measures, many of European cities are starting to actually considering nature-based solutions to mitigate and hopefully to solve these challenges. And URBREATH work indeed on this topic. So the co-design of nature-based solutions in our 9 pilot cities through the involvement of the local communities. So we are using living labs to involve the local communities in the design of our nature-based solutions, and thanks to the support of digital technologies such as local digital twins and AI. So the 3 pillars of our URBREATH project are for sure living lab, digital technologies, and nature-based solutions. So for the living lab, we are already working on them. There are living labs going on in each of the 9 pilot cities. Of course, we are helping our pilot cities setting their living lab, and we are collecting a lot of data from the local communities about their needs, about their thoughts, in order to involve, as I said, as much as possible the local communities in the design of the nature-based solution. But as I said, URBREATH is not only about the co-design of nature-based solutions, but it's also about using NBS supporting tools, such as local digital twins, AI, but also e-participation tools, and so on. So we are really putting together a sort of URBREATH toolbox with many components that make this toolbox, and each city will then, in a second moment, decide which of these components would like to have deployed locally. So the URBREATH toolbox will be the legacy of our project, but each of the frontrunner cities will also have the choice to choose which of these toolbox components would like to have locally deployed, in order to leave to our pilot city also a legacy after the end of the project. Of one of our pilot sites, specifically the one in Tallinn. It's a former actually a neglected and abandoned area that has been used for the Olympic Games, but right now it's kind of not very used by the local communities. There is a sauna that and some people are going to swim there, but it's really an abandoned site. So this is a video that represents the digital twin, the local digital twin that one of our technological partners is developing for each of the pilot cities. And of course, this local digital twin will not only use to simulate the nature-based solution that Tallinn, together with the other pilot cities, will design and then implement, but it's also used for the communication with the local community. Because of course, having a 3D model is much easier than having just like a 2D drawings. A screenshot of the Leuven digital twin. And of course, the local digital twins we are building are not only 3D models of our cities, but also have data layers built on them, such as in this screenshot we can say we can see the temperature, the humidity. So according to the different needs of our pilots, we are building and deploying in the digital twin different data layers that can be helpful. So in terms of outputs and results of our project, there are, of course, many of them that are related to tangible, let's say, results in terms of, as I said, the ICT tools, but also the possibility of having simulation models for monitoring and choosing the right NBS. So but at the end, something that I wanted to give you as a final message is that URBREATH is trying to developing and introducing in our pilot cities, but also in other cities after the end of the project, new methods and tools to boost data-driven decision and policy making for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And of course, to enhance trust, collaboration, and engagement through the simulation, the visualization, and the selection of optimal nature-based solutions. But of course, this is not a rigid methodology, but is also allow for some flexibility and modularity in order to be applied to the different contexts within which our project is working. So staying in touch with us, we have like different social media channels you can use. So I would now probably leave the floor to the second project, that is the usage.
Thank you very much, Marcella. So we give the floor to Natalia Oprea, researcher at the Lisbon Council, who will present the project usage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Marcella. So I think the project that I will present today, first of all, has several advantages. First of all, it touches upon different topics that, for instance, previously Andrea Halmos was mentioning. And the second advantage is that we are towards the end, and I'm really happy and glad to present some of the results that we have already achieved during these almost 34 months of the project. So just before we start, a super brief recap about what was already said previously in the previous presentation regarding the so-called European data strategy that was launched in 2020. And one of the most, let's say, ambitious aims is to, of course, create a single market for data in order to transform the European continent in an innovation champion. One of the main, let's say, goals of the European data strategy was the creation of common European data spaces that was mentioned earlier by the speaker from the European Commission. And we will come later to this because it's one key important, let's say, aspect of the project. And the second strategy, cornerstone of the European Commission is the European Green Deal that was launched in 2019. It was an ambitious strategy that aims to actually take the advantage of the environmental and climate challenges and transform them into economic opportunities. And as many people know, there are 9 policy areas in the European Green Deal that have been identified, which all aim to bring climate resilience by 2050 of the European continent. And the third element that is important to mention is that 74% of the European population live in Europe, and at the same time 70% of the European legislation is implemented at the level of cities, which means that in a way cities are called to drive the so-called twin transition, so the green and the digital transition in Europe. First of all, by activating the participation of all stakeholders group, and I will try to convince you about that because no one stands alone in this mission. And the second thing is, of course, to exploit the potential of data to effectively support the Green Deal actions at the local level. So the question that we have is, are the data spaces actually able to realize the European Green Deal ambitions? And as I said, the data space concept is something that is at the core of the European digital strategy. And the usage project that I'm presenting today is about that. So how can we bring data spaces at the local level in order to realize some of the ambitions of the European Green Deal? The project, as I said, has been running for almost 34 months, so we are ending quite shortly. It has been coordinated by the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, and what it tries to do is to enable universal access to city-level environmental and climate data, but most important is to follow the FAIR principles. What we did, I think, the approach, the important part of the project was not to reinvent the wheel, but actually to make sure that what is already there, because most of the cities have already done a lot of actions, both regarding environmental sustainability and digital transformation. So what we did was, first of all, to understand what is there, and on top of that, build some feasible solutions and develop standard-based solutions like algorithms, tools, and of course, newly developed data. We have 4 pilot cities across Europe, one in Italy, in Ferrara, one in Spain, Zaragoza. In Austria, we have Graz and Leuven in Belgium. And just to move very quickly about how the whole flow was, as I mentioned, was to understand, first of all, the city context. So because there is a long track of climate policies, but also digital transformation initiatives, we try to understand the context. And based on that, on top of that, we try to identify the needs of the various stakeholders. And that was an important part, because it's not only about the public administration, it's also, of course, about city-relevant stakeholders that generate data that can be used in order to actually bring down to earth some of these ambitions of the European Green Deal. And the stakeholders were an important part. We have, since the beginning, involved them in trying to understand their needs, their challenges, not only from a technological point of view, but we know that there are also legislations that sometimes are harder to implement at the local level. There are organizational, informational, and different sort of challenges that we try to understand how to sort of overcome them during the implementation of our project. What we did was to identify some local climate challenges that, let's say, align with the European Green Deal policy areas, which actually are somehow, in most cases, and in all the cases, what we saw is that there are actually local strategies, plans, and contracts even. So, for instance, I might cite the city contract in Zaragoza. So basically, we try to align all these strategic documents in order to see how the developed solutions that we planned in usage project align and support the realization of these aims. And eventually, everything that we have produced in terms of, let's say, technology, data, algorithms, and tools can be transformed into so-called decision-ready information to support the decision and the policy-making process. And all these was developed through some use cases that I will shortly show you now. So this is in a way a recap. As I said, we identified across these 4 pilot cities 3 main policy areas. So climate action, both mitigation and adaptation, biodiversity and energy. And based on that, we have developed 11 use cases. Why do I mention the use cases? Well, first of all, the Data Space Support Center insists on the importance of developing use cases. But the second thing is that actually based on the use cases, we were able to involve different stakeholders in the development of these tools in order to make sure that they actually fit with their needs. So for instance, in the case of Ferrara, there are utility companies and also private companies that jumped into this project because of these use cases, because they were actually satisfying their needs. So in a way, I'm sorry that Andrea Halmos is not there, but it is one of the approaches in how to actually involve private stakeholders in sharing data. And actually, it's, as we said, it's not necessarily has to be an open data all the time. It can also be shared based on some identity management, let's say, solutions, and to make sure that actually these, let's say, data sharing happens with a certain purpose, not just for the sake of being open. We have developed different solutions, as I said, and I've tried to cluster them in a way based on 3 main needs, so strategic and policy-making needs. So we've tried to develop solutions that, as I said, decision-ready information that can actually guide urban planning and investments, and we see very interesting results there. We also, of course, develop solutions that are technical, so we have a GeoNetwork-based catalog that is all standard-based. We have different, let's say, 427, 26 data set metadata published, and 62 metadata algorithms were published and deployable and reusable for all the pilot cities, but not only. And in terms of informational needs, we think that, of course, citizens and other stakeholders can be involved and take advantage of these solutions because they are data-driven and accessible visualizations like maps, dashboards, and so on and so forth, and also data stories, which can actually enhance the communication with citizens. And I think that was very clear during all the community events that we organized. We've recently done a climathon in Ferrara, which involved actually the whole community, and it was an interesting experience to see how data can have an impact, not only in terms of developing solutions for the European Green Deal, but also for engaging different audiences. And just to wrap up, I think we might safely say throughout this project that data spaces can actually support data-driven actions and to tackle climate challenges. and they can provide accurate and updated information throughout the whole process of the policy making, so from agenda setting to implementation. But it needs to make sure that the collaboration of different stakeholders is there, and one way to ensure that is through agreements. And we saw that when agreements are between different stakeholders to create a data space, then all the other things are really easier to achieve. And the last thing I would say, it aligns somehow with the also the aims of the Data Space Support Center, is that eventually all these data spaces have to be federated, because no data space is an island. So thank you. Here is the QR code that you can access on the Usage Project website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. We move now to Francesco Simanti, Associate and Project Manager at the Lisbon Council, who will present the project ExPEDite.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And yes, I'm here representing again the Lisbon Council and the third project that operating pretty much in the same realm of common European data spaces and a digital twin. The project is called ExPEDite. First of all, I would like to, let's say, give a bit of the contextualization on a policy level on what the project is about. The project mainly faced the key challenge of redesigning cities and make them more resilient, inclusive, let's say sustainable, according to the following United Nations Sustainable Development Goals number 11, and most of all the European Mission Cities Initiative, which aims at accelerating this transition by supporting 100 cities. I think they improved and they enhanced this overall number lately. By the way, it goes beyond 100 to achieve climate neutrality by 2030, acting as an experimentation and innovation hubs. The angle we take at ExPEDite is slightly different, because we focus, of course, primarily on sustainability within urban areas, but we stick to the positive energy district concept. For those of you who might not be familiar, the PEDs are energy efficient and energy flexible urban areas of different groups of interconnected buildings, like let's say talking to each other and having the shared goal to achieve a net zero greenhouses emission and carbon emission, and ideally, let's say hopefully, achieve also a surplus of renewable energy on an annual basis. This is not just about the concept of positive energy district. It's not just about achieving a surplus of energy, but it's also about, let's say, regenerating urban areas, making this district a more livable place to live, where residents might desire and might be more willing to live on, to achieve a more good quality life in terms of economic, societal, and environmental sustainability. The project is also fully aligned with the program Positive Energy District and Neighborhood for Sustainable and Urban Development, and support the planning and the deployment and replication of 100 positive energy neighborhoods by 2025. And it's supported by the European Commission platform JPI Urban Europe. It's an open platform for different stakeholders to meet up and discuss all of these subjects. So the key goal and what is supposed to be the main output of the project is the creation and deployment of a novel digital twin, allowing for the real monitoring, visualization, and management of energy flows at district level. Also, to get back to what Mrs. Olmas said at the keynote introductory speech, real-time monitoring of data was one of the top priority goals she listed down. A very few words, like a snapshot in this slide of what our consortium is about. We are a group of 19 different partners scattered pretty much all over Europe, from the southernmost up to the northernmost past. The project is led by the RTU University of Riga, and we are quite a multifaceted and versatile group of partners, academic-driven, research-driven, and NGOs, but also some technical SMEs working on the more technical components. A quick glimpse of the foundational blocks of the project that are going to be the cornerstone of the positive energy district. The building stock energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, energy flexibility, e-mobility, and intelligent transport system. Is going to be fully integrated and coordinated with the support of citizen engagement actions. Citizen engagement actions will be promoted through a dedicated mobile application that is on this moment under development to increase the awareness and improving the citizens' residents' behavior towards energy efficiency through gamification. So the proactive role, again, it was I think stated again in the introductory speech as well, that the proactive role of the citizens and the residents of the area will be crucial in order to achieve the successful deployment of the positive energy district. Here are the main stakeholders we are going to talk to. Of course, the city planners, the representative of the municipality of Riga. They will be crucial, of course, for taking for the uptake of the strategic decision and for sustainability initiatives. Needless to say, the citizens, those are going to be the ones to be really testing the different components. We will group them in a few months from now in a week of living lab testing in Riga in the Kipsala area that I will show you in the next slide, where the living lab and co-creation phase will take place. The building and infrastructure managers of the region. Also some external stakeholders like the utility companies, research and municipalities representatives as well, to collaborate on the urban sustainability goals and also to boost, let's say, the data sharing and the external integration. In this slide, you can have a view of the Kipsala Peninsula. This is an actual peninsula nestled in a corner in a neighborhood in the outskirts actually of the city of Riga. It's a student city. Is it entirely for its entirety populated with students, and it's this location has been chosen because it's pretty handy for running such an experimentation, because it's quite close and detached from the rest of the city, and even the access are quite controllable. So all the numbers are very easily measurable and tangible. It's an area of 17 hectares. There are 12 faculties with building laboratories, 2 dormitories. All that's pretty brand new. All the main building have been recently refurbished and renovated, and all well equipped with a building management system and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system as well. And finally, I'd like to recap here in a nutshell which are the main expected outcomes. I forgot to say that we are also in our halfway of our journey. We are exactly in this month, actually, so we are going to face also our first review in a few months with our project officers. The first outcome is, of course, the development of a reusable ExPEDite digital twin framework with a bottom-up approach in order to spark, let's say, a knock-on effect, a domino effect, and to convince and persuade more city planners and other municipality representatives in Europe to take on this initiative and hopefully try to establish the same positive energy district in their city as well. Definition of an open data architecture and data collection framework to be easily replicable in other urban contexts, and there is also the contribution to the enhancement of the innovation capacity of local regional administration. And again, that's pretty much the same goal set under different terms to accelerate the uptake of shared, smart, and sustainable zero-emission solutions. Okay, I would like to thank you, and you can see here some of our digital outlets to get to know more about the project. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Francesco. We move now to Luca Alessandro Remotti, who is a co-founder and a managing partner of Data Power.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Francesco. Lots of Francescos around and Francescas. I am particularly thrilled to discuss this project, which is close to its completion. It will finish end of June. And it's an example of a concrete implementation based on data and on digital services, which at the same time brings together the needs of, in this case, smart cities, the very different needs of smart cities, and data which enable the services which help the smart cities to better manage very different problems. This is not necessary. So where do we are lucky to have received funding by the European Union to run this experimental project. It's the Digital Europe program. It's a co-funded action, and it's really implementation driven. The leader is a technology company, so data are as important because data are the enabler of our digital services, which we have implemented, and it's perfectly embedded in the European data strategy, giving a very high importance to people. And in particular, focusing on what are called high-value datasets, meaning datasets with a particular structure, particularly described, and for these reasons, with a particular facility of being reused in similar or different contexts. And high-value datasets are regulated by, the high-value dataset regulation, which sets out a number of criteria according to which these datasets should be structured and set out at reusing them for different services in different contexts, in different settings, and by different cities, obviously. In our case, the high-value datasets are the enablers of the services for smart cities. You will see we will have a huge number of pilots, 15 of them. Some are similar, all deployed in 8 different cities. And a significant number of these pilots are set out to tackle sustainability and environmental problems. We have the problem of heat islands, we have the problems of floods, we have the problem of traffic control in city centers, we have the problem of lighting. LED lighting is very energy efficient, but it may have harmful effects on health, on the sleep of people. Infestants. In Vilnius, there is the huge problem of hogweed, which is a plant which was diffused for ornamental purposes, but can create serious harm to people. And since I mentioned that we have a concrete implementation, we started from needs. So what is needed? What do the cities need? And what data is needed to meet these needs? Of course, let's not forget that we work in the framework of the high-value datasets defined by the Commission. So what are the requirements? What should we do with them? And one of the purposes of the BeOPen project was to improve the datasets, to make sure that the datasets complied with the specifications of the regulation and could be made available in a wider context. There is a repository since a year of high-value data sets. We have concretely implemented through the technological partners in the project. We have concretely developed the digital services. They were implemented, tested. The stakeholders were presented the services, were able to use them, doing live demonstrations, and also assessing them. So we really put in an effort to understand how effective these services could be in meeting the needs of the stakeholders. And replication is also a very important line of action, understanding how these services, these data, these approaches, these improvement lines could be used for the benefit of other scenarios. The outcomes of our project is a technical framework to handle data, which is obviously meets the idea of how we develop high-value data sets. The digital services themselves, which are something that the cities need, and they are also prepared and willing to develop further. The city of Porto has a problem of floods. They have identified a number of data sets, rainfall, groundwater levels, which help them better dealing with the problem of floods. Other cities have the problems of heat islands to plan mitigation measures, and they are using data, mapping the scenarios, understanding where the heat islands build up, how mitigation measures can be put in place. And these are in particular the Spanish cities in the south, around Cartagena and Torre Pacheco and Molina de Segura. They are in the south, an area which is particularly prone to excessive heat during the summer. The catalog of high-value data sets, creating something replicable, which can be used in the same services, but also for other services. A community of stakeholders and a trust framework. What are the criteria according to which we can facilitate the use of high-value data sets and our approach to developing the services? And an impact assessment framework. And this is something which is very particularly close to my heart, because I like to evaluate and see which impacts can be generated. And obviously we faced the issue of data. Data is a very important but also a very critical factor. Data collection is expensive, data maintenance is expensive, curating data is very expensive, and once we discuss the issue of data to take decisions to assess the impacts, we must be aware of this. And the problem is that the world is so diverse that the levels of granularity needed for the different purposes is so high that we need to carefully discuss the trade-off between having all the possible data we may need and the cost of handling, producing, and managing these data. All in all, the results are very positive. Most of the smart cities participating in the projects are willing to develop the services further, to use them in the future, even though the objectives may not have been met within the scope of the project. There is a scope to take everything further. And this is a particularly interesting feature of this project, because it's not going to stop. I'm sure, and we are sure, that it's not going to stop after the 30th of June, but the cities are going to develop them further, develop the data sets further, develop the services further, add additional functions, and make sure that they get products and outputs which help them better managing the problems they have identified. This is us. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the first question is for Francesco Simanti. So, considering the European strategy on data spaces, how do you think that this strategy boosts data sharing? To what extent and what maybe could be done to improve the situation even further?
Yes, that's a good one. I think again at in the introduction, some of this question has been partially taken up and answered already. Well, in my opinion, I can say that common European data spaces is like a pivotal part of the broader European data strategy to make this data sharing more easily shared, interoperable, accessible all over Europe. I think as a first point, the narrowing down in sectoral data spaces, right? The financial one, the Green Deal one, the agricultural, transport. I think this might facilitate the integration and this interoperability, because each data space, this tailorization can better suit the let's say the benefits and the needs of each specific domain. So I think this is the first point. There is also the trust and governance point as well. I think having a tailored data governance frameworks and model for each of these spaces can improve. I think the goal is to improve the data protection itself, and this might make the different public administrations and anyway overall entities more prone and willing to share their data, having at the same time also their full control and ownership on data as well. Maybe I'll, as a third point, I'll add also a more technical side, technical component like the interoperability and the standardization. This technical compatibility between the infrastructures of the data spaces might make more might facilitate, let's say, a broader participation of different organizations and public administrations again, and the uptake of in the overall process. I think these three aspects. I mean, the narrowing down of in different data spaces, the trust and governance side, and the compatibility one, the technical one.
I just wanted to add that, however, at the local level, the concept of data spaces is still quite unknown from what we have seen with different pilot cities. I mean, it's a concept that still has to, somehow permeate into the conscience of the different stakeholders. They are still thinking in a way of, okay, so what is actually a data space? It's an infrastructure. Oh, so are you talking about a platform? And it's not necessarily about the platform. And the other thing is that they still think that all the data generated has to be open, and they are afraid of that, right? I mean, some of the stakeholders are afraid of, or let's not okay, the word is wrong, are reluctant. It's not that they are afraid. So they would need somehow, as you said, Francesco, some trust building, supporting mechanisms to make sure that what they are generating, how it is shared and used, first of all, is not necessarily with everyone, but with specific identified stakeholders who will make good purpose use of the data. So what we saw that is now probably we are seeing a sort of shift in seeing a data space as solution, but it's not a very widespread idea. This is what we saw. And of course, our project has moved things forward, but I don't know. It's something that we will need to see in the future how it develops, but I think it's still at the initial early stages.
Just to close, if I can have, don't want to dig deeper into technicalities because first of all I'm not capable of, but it's just to stress the correctness of what you said about this reluctancy. But I think the Commission is doing, of course, the process is much into an ongoing phase, just to be optimistic. But anyway, the Commission is doing a lot to support the uptake of all these, as the same as they are doing with the AI Act. I think recently, at the beginning of this year, they have launched this simple. I think it's called
middleware.
The middleware platform, and they are also the Data Space Support Center that often organize this thematic group to discuss this thing around and support the public administration. But what you said is fully right, and I agree. Yeah.
As a follow-up question to Natalia, actually. So you spoke before about a federation of data spaces. So can you maybe elaborate a bit on the concept?
Yeah, of course. I mean, from a technical point of view, I'm not the expert necessarily.
From the conceptual.
Yes, I would say that it is important, as I just briefly mentioned, it's not always clear what we are talking about data spaces. So is it a platform? No, it's not necessarily a platform. It has to be an infrastructure that is decentralized, and some technical, let's say, measures have to be in place in order to make sure that the data space actually operates the way it is. But in order to, so let me give you just a very simple example. So we are talking about an urban data space. And very often I receive these questions, what it is, right? So why do we call it an urban data space? And what I'm trying to sort of elaborate is the fact that at the urban level, we have different types of data, but that are not necessarily generated only by the city stakeholders. They can be, let's say, data collected and shared by the regional government, the national, and in some cases, as we saw, for instance, the Destination Earth with the Copernicus, who actually provide satellite data that sometimes it's cheaper to use in some cases, but not necessarily. So they have a different resolution. You cannot use it every time, right? So for all the aspects. And the thing is that when we talk about an urban data space, that means that at a certain level, from the technical point of view, but also from a governance perspective, which is very important, they don't have to be seen as an island. They have to connect with the national initiatives or regional in some cases, and collaborate among each other and be federated. And that not only means the technical part. So when we talk, for instance, the interoperability, all the standardization, so using the same formats and data models. I think around the data models, there have been like endless discussions. What kind of data models do we use? But we need to make sort of sure that we have a common denominator that allows us to federate across the data spaces, and I'm not saying only necessarily thematically. So, for instance, about the Green Deal, because there are certain types of data, for instance, in the health data space that can actually be used for the urban data space. So that's what I'm saying, that they have to be federated because some certain type of data have to be integrated and interchangeable among data spaces at the local, regional, national, and of course, European level. But I think there are some other aspects from the technical point of view that we need to discuss. For instance, I think the European health data space, they are making really step forwards how to actually exchange what kind of data there are. We are talking about very sensitive data there. So that's a different story. I don't want to go into the more technicalities, but there is a way to do so, but it's important that we make sure that they are just not isolated and built around just one topic, but need to be integrated.
Thank you very much. I have a question also for Luca. As you know, I've been studying, basically the impact of open data, let's say for the last 15 years or even more. And, data sets have been opened over the years, but the take-up and the reuse of this data appears to be still quite limited. So why is it that? It is because, those categories of data are very specific, so there are not many companies that are able to reuse them, or there are still some, let's say, disadvantages, some bottlenecks. And on top of that, what might be the role of generative AI? So the use, or basically the development of AI services for smart cities in reusing massively those data.
Thank you, Francesco. I think this is an extremely interesting question because it impacts on one key issue. What is going to happen with all the stuff we do and with all the public money we spend to do the things we do, and where it is going to go? And I don't know exactly. I have no vision of the universe, unfortunately, or fortunately. But I think that the problem is governance. And governance means somebody needs to take care of these assets we build. And somebody needs to continue seeing value in the things we develop. So what's the value? Is it just for the sake of completing a project? Or is it for the sake of creating something which is worth for the communities? And also some kind of commercial attitude is probably useful because sustainability means getting resources from somewhere to sustain what I said before. I mean, handling data is a very expensive thing, and I mean, not necessarily profit shall come into play, not at all, but somehow this whole thing needs to be sustained, and the governance model needs to look into how to make it sustainable, how to share the knowledge, share the opportunities, share the potential, and increasing the group, the community of entities, institutions, people who see the values behind the data sets which are produced and may further develop them and work towards broader deployments, different deployments, and transfer. On the large language models, what was the question exactly?
I mean, the point is that, you know, a lot of cities are developing AI services for smart city, also within the scope of the project that you, of BeOPen, that you presented. So do you think that, you know, developing more and more AI services will help to reuse more the data that are available?
I think so, yes. I think, I mean, if I may start with a more general discourse on AI.
There are time constraints.
Yes, but 2 minutes. It's a hype. It's a hype. AI seems now the instrument to save the world. Probably it's not. But certainly clarifying what AI is and also clarifying what specialized AI can do to support real-life processes is something very important. And we demonstrate it through what we have implemented in BeOPen. I think all services are based on AI, on specialized AI. Some don't work. I can say it clearly. Some hallucinate, some yield results which are not trustworthy. But working with these results and improving is certainly the way to go.
Yes. Thank you very much. Last question is for Marcella. So one of the challenges that basically made you know, important URBREATH and the concept of URBREATH is that oftentimes nature-based solutions or digital solutions are top-down, so there is not really you know, democratic sharing and co-creation. So how do you recognize and how do you reconcile the democratic dimension with basically the necessity to use very advanced technologies and tools?
Thank you, Francesco, for the very interesting question. So for sure, as I said, one of the pillars of the URBREATH project is the involvement of local community. So not only for the design of the nature-based solution, but also for the design and the testing of the technical solution that our project is developing. Of course, this is not always easy, because involving the communities in the design of either nature-based or technical solutions can also be challenging. So there should be, let's say, a balance, a trade-off. But for sure, what our cities are doing with their local communities is to set up their living labs, and after the first like conceptualization and development of our tools, actually the first release from our technical partners for some of the components that they are building is going to be at the end of this month. And after this first release, there's going to be a testing phase of our tools. So the local communities will be actually invited to test and use the components that we are building. So we will, of course, get feedback from them and elaborate them in order to further improve the tools we are developing, and of course taking into consideration the suggestions and the feedback we will get from the local communities. And yeah, so I think, I mean, it's a very important pillar of our project, but we are also seeing very differences among the different cities that come probably from their like even cultural backgrounds. So there are some pilot cities that are very, very pushing for this involvement of local communities and for the co-design with them. Some others that are starting to do that, so they are moving their first steps in this world of co-creation. But for sure, what we are also enabling within our project is the peer-to-peer learning. So we hope that after the end of our project, even those cities that were a bit more reluctant to boost and their co-creation process, they will for sure do that, learning from their peers about the benefits of the co-creation with the local communities.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you, first of all, so much for the presentations and the interesting discussion. I'm an economic advisor for the Ministry of Education here, and we have the luxury of having a lot of data already about where students are studying, where they end up working. But as you guys mentioned, the use of this data is still quite underdeveloped in the places that we'd like it to see, also within my own organization. So that's also kind of the question that I have for you. You mentioned several presentations that the specific needs of the stakeholders that either collect or use the data are very important to manage and to follow up on in these projects. How do you translate these maybe often very specific desires, regional desires, local desires, into these projects that you're hoping to scale up to larger initiatives? Are there certain common threads that you see in the demands of cities that perhaps you've combined, or are there certain bottlenecks that you see that sort of always have to be dealt with before you can work on all of these projects that you've been discussing?
Well, let's say that I think that the co-creation word is really a buzzword recently. I remember that I've heard the presentation of some facilitator of co-design workshop from Canada, and he was very motivated to say that co-creation is really super interesting. Yeah, sorry. Something very useful, something very interesting, but you know, grouping, clustering all these things together is really challenging. So sometimes you see that it's like a daunting, let's say, exercise. But what we did was to understand the needs and to sort of cluster them in the sense of, okay, so do you have technical needs? So we, for instance, one of the most recurrent thing was that I want to exchange data, but the CSV that he has is not compatible with my application, and we need, you know, to use the same standards. Or the other thing is that, how do you exchange data? Well, I send an email as an attachment, and it's, you know, it's time consuming. It's not the way we want it to be, right? So these were, I'm just giving examples of the technical needs. But then we started to collect other types of needs that are organizational, informational, legislative, sometimes of the legal nature, right? So we tried to cluster them, and I mean, we have to be realistic to say that we are not answering to all the needs and challenges, that's for sure, but identifying the top priority ones that can actually, you know, somehow bring more stakeholders around those needs. Because, for instance, private actors, they do also have needs. They would like to exchange data or use not necessarily open data. That's very interesting. They would like to have access to data that is privileged only for the public administration. So I will give an example, very simple example: vulnerability, right? So in order to understand where you have to prioritize your actions, in some cases, what was done was to identify where the vulnerable groups are residing. And how do you measure vulnerability? It's a very sensitive issue at the political level, right? So how do you define vulnerable population? And there were a lot of discussions. So there you actually need to involve also politicians, because it's something that it touches them directly. You need to involve the research groups, because what you sort of try to do is, it has to be evidence-based. It has to be, you know, validated also by the scientific community somehow. And then you involve technical partners who also have needs, but can also, you know, very often private companies actually do the services for the public administration. So you need to engage them. So what we tried to do was, you know, to gather all these things together and develop solutions around that. And we are sure, or let's say, we are trustful that all these solutions are going to be used not only by the public administration, because unfortunately, the many municipalities see themselves as the most responsible actors, but they don't necessarily have to be alone in this mission. But also private companies, utility companies, regional government, they are also involved, and who will make, they will leverage all these resources for themselves. And that, I think, ensures what Luca briefly mentioned, but I think is very important: the governance. Who should be the authority is very important. I don't have the answer. I heard that many think that the public administration should be the authority, but I don't think it's the right answer. I mean, yes, but, and the other thing is, how do we make sure that actually all that we do is going to be supported, maintained, because it's costly, as you said, and I totally agree. But this is one way to sort of ensure that, right, that you involve them during all this process.
If I may add one very quick remark, we stand in front of the question: how long is a piece of string, and how do I make ensure that similar pieces of string can be used by those who need these strings at the length which they have been cut. So it's about being aware that sustainability and continuation is a whole different but attached process to the construction of data sets, to the use of data sets, but also the involvement of stakeholders. It's not disconnected. Who owns the data? Who is in charge of them? Who uses them? I mean, it's the data, it's their structure, it's their technical definition, and all the entities and people circling around this.
Yeah, thanks for a super interesting panel. I actually have a question, I think, that actually is in line with what was just discussed. So when you look at citizen collectives in a sustainable space, what you have is usually a group of citizens that are willing to engage in sustainable practices in their neighborhood. And they're also willing to potentially benefit from their data that they're producing. But then there's that step: where do you put this data, and who do you trust? And often these are people that do not trust the government, but they also don't want to share their data with a private entity. So then my question would be, how do you engage with people also when it comes to data literacy, right? What can they do with their data? Because that's actually really important microdata that usually the government does not have insights into. Also, statistical offices struggle with this microdata. So then the question is, how do you actually connect these citizen collectives? I also heard the word living labs, right? How do you actually connect that data-wise to a broader governance?
Certainly, I'm not in charge of let's say the data collection task and the data management in a post and after living lab operation. As far as I know from the coordinatorship, all is going to be done, and they are going to be fully informed about that. The data utilization is going to be limited within the framework of the living lab activities, and it's going to serve uniquely the purpose of testing the components of the projects, and that's it. So it's an internal feedback virtuous system. I think there is not going to be any further shareability with other entities other than within the sole purpose of the scope of activities. Maybe consequentially with some entities of the Commission as well, because the project is a European funded one. But I mean, the data are not supposed to go beyond and to go out the project scope. Not even the project scope, I think, the RTU municipality and living lab scope, because it's very, we don't have many, talking of my of the project I'm involved in, the ExPEDite in Riga, in the Riga campus city. That's the only testing pilot we have. It's not even a pilot; it's a testing spot where we are going to test all the components, primarily the mobile application for the energy efficiency management, and that's the only purpose for which the data will be utilized. But this is exclusively pertaining my the project.
Can I add just a second? So I do agree that there is a sort of self-selection in the citizens that participate and share data. And actually, this was the case in one pilot city in Ferrara. So what we did was to develop a tool where citizen science volunteers participate right after the flooding. So in a way to support the flooding emergency management phase. It was a region, an area of the city where so for the last decade, that part of the city was always flooded. And people were really enraged there, right? And what happened is that the municipality decided to do it a two-stage way. So they first did a hydraulic study, which is, a scientific study with all the data that they had to collect at different levels. They have produced some maps with the vulnerability. So, it is called the permeability index of the soil, right? And they distributed these maps to the citizen, asking them to actually report data right after the flooding phases. So they just collect data because they have been instructed during the citizen labs how to, so they use a very simple Q field. It's called an app. It's a very simple app that you use. You have all the data that you collect is georeference, everything. And thanks to this initiative, even very reluctant citizens started to be involved. But I think that was because they finally sort of saw that the municipality is making something for them, because the second stage will be, of course, to develop solutions, because it's not only the data that we need to collect. But it was interesting actually to see that many citizens that were very angry and even like they didn't even want to hear anything about this. They started to say, look, I did this, and thanks to this data, I think many people now start to be more aware of what they can do and that they have actually a voice. I'm not saying this is a solution, but I think it has to be a two-stage. And actually, in this case, citizen science data, so all the data, is used to actually calibrate all the models that have been developed. So that's one way that, besides the living lab solutions, I think that citizen science is also something that, widespread, and it's not only self-selected.
Thanks.
I would like to add just one thing, that also the technology helps us in certain respects with the data anonymization, for instance. Or if we consider specific categories of data, let's consider, for instance, health-related data. According to the law, I'm not allowed to share my own data, even though I want to share my health data, medical information, I cannot do it. So what is possible to do? It's possible to apply federated learning, according to which computations are carried out, for instance, in micro data centers in the hospitals, and then the results of the computations migrate and are aggregated in a certain platform and structure. So this is a possibility to overcome, the privacy concerns. So I would like to thank everybody. I would like to thank the speakers. I would like to thank the audience and the organizers of the conference. Thank you very much, and let's keep in touch.